Progress continues on the MN&S Transfer Caboose. We look at steam, as well as some older freight cars that I weathered back in 2012.
You just blew my mind.
And we cover all this on this episode of the GN in 1970.
70s.
We're going to continue moving forward with the M&S build. As you can see, I've got some grabs to put on. I don't have to do the cupola, but there's still a lot of different little small holes that need to be drilled before these get installed. They have a little package full of all the details, and there are a lot of them, but it takes a little bit of patience to actually get through this process. One of the things that I do is start pre-drilling. They have a little dimple where you can actually set the pre-drill, and I want to open that up to have a little bit more space. Now, if I look at this here, there's actually a high spot and a low spot, and the low spot obviously is where the drill bit goes. When you start working this in, you can start to slightly turn the drill bit and develop a little bit more of a recess so it'll actually go into the right location, because often it slips off and you got yourself an issue. So what I do is actually take just a little needle and I work it into the actual hole itself. I find the concaved hole and I work it just in a circular motion. This works a lot like an awl. If you're not familiar with what an awl is in the woodworking world,
Hey, boy, that's a real beautiful awl you got there.
Hey, thanks a lot there, you hoser.
it's just basically a pointy tool that allows you to be able to pre-drill or set a nail into a proper location. All right, as you can see, I've got the grabs on here. I've installed most of them, and I'm going to continue this process, but what I've actually got to look at here is assembling the underframe. This is all going to get painted black, but I'm going to test fit it here to ensure that I'm able to put the grabs on in the proper locations, because I do have to cut the roof walks off, which I've actually done on this, but I also have to cut the ladders down. So here are the ladders themselves. I'm going to just cut them off the sprues. I use a sprue cutter. It's a very nice tool to have if you don't have one. It's definitely worth adding to your tool repertoire. And here you just go through and you just snip all these off. So now we can get this test fit onto the caboose itself. And there's one thing I did run into when fitting this on here. There's a little extra sprue that sticks up in the center. In the very center, right above the coupler, there is no hole. But on the actual mold of the ladder, you can see this piece, and I just cut it off. So as we look at the roof of the caboose, there are actually two holes where the ladder is meant to slide down in. I'm actually going to slide these in because they're actually a square ladder into a square hole, and I'm going to be able to cut this off right flush with the roof. And that's going to serve as a filler for each of these holes before I end up moving along and cutting the actual tops of the ladder off. So I want to make sure I cut the top of the ladder off at the actual flushness of the roof. So I snip this one off here, and I snip this other one off here. And that's going to give me basically where I'm going to start off with a modified ladder. I have a few other details to add to it, but this is a good starting point. Well, one of the details I actually want to subtract is there's one grab that is going across from the center to the ladder. I'm going to take this one off because it's not in the prototype. So it's easy enough just to be able to snip these particular pieces off because they're plastic. Now, leftover pieces, these are the top portions of the actual ladder. You can see this is the top portion that came off when I snipped them. I'm going to use these to fill the extra holes that the roof walk had occupied. So I go along here and I just stick a piece of the plastic down in there and snip it off as flush as I can. And I'll go along the entire roof and do this process to be able to make sure that I've filled in all those little holes. And I leave those tall portions or the stanchions of the roof walk because they were left there in the prototype. So now I've actually taken the time to cut out a couple of the diamonds out of brass. I use the same stuff. This is the K&S Engineering .005 brass sheet. It works great for so many different applications. As you can see, I've got the diamond that I cut out. That's for the logo. The actual logo will be laid onto the diamond because that's the way the prototypes were done. They were mounted onto steel, and then I'll obviously apply that to the car. So kind of a unique little detail, but worth adding. And another piece of brass I ended up adding is the anti-climb plate that is added to the end right on the ladder. As you can see here, I've got the end pretty close to where I want it, and I think it's going to be ready for paint as far as the end portion and the bottom is concerned. So what I'll end up doing here is popping that off, and we'll get it sprayed up black. Now here's a random tangent I normally don't go on, and that's steam. I actually got an opportunity to get together with a few Great Northern modelers. Richard Webb is actually speaking with George Fisher, who also has done a lot of Great Northern modeling. And there's actually this A9060. It was made by Westside Model Company. Well, it turns out George Fisher actually scratch built one of these years ago. Obviously, before manufacturers come out with something, you have to model it first. Well, he did. He did an exceptional job, and George was actually just discussing with Richard a few of the details that the Great Northern had on these particular locomotives. And while those two talked about those details, I couldn't help but notice this 484 Great Northern, a beast of a locomotive. Dennis had this particular model sitting on the tracks and says, "Hey, you want to check out more power?" As Tim Taylor would say, "You're darn right, more power." As great as those things sound, I swear these particular units have magnets in them because they just naturally attract me to them. These are center cabs. These are Baldwins that were made by Division Point. They're an HO scale. They are brass locomotives that have incredible detail. I can't get over just how nice these things look, how nice they run. And if you want great sound, you can obviously contact ELS Train Service because Dennis does a wonderful job installing sound into any locomotive that an individual may put in front of him. He's definitely a brass specialist. As you can see, a few of the brass pieces that are sitting around. There's a demonstrator Baldwin center cab that we're looking at here. Again, from a quality standpoint, these things are just top notch. The detail and just how fine they are is incredible. Now, Division Point, as far as a model is concerned, definitely get them dialed in as far as the quality. The price is definitely up there, so if you're looking for these particular type of pieces, you might want to sell off a handful of your locomotives to be able to purchase one of these, but you won't be disappointed. I cannot get over just the grabs, the interiors, the amount of detail that can be found on a locomotive like this is just impeccable. Now, these particular locomotives are, again, all brass, but for those SP&S models that are out there, don't want to ignore you. I threw a few of them in here because I don't see SP&S too often here in the Twin Cities, but when we do get to see it, I always enjoy checking it out. Talk about something that's unique and different. This thing is either incredibly beautiful or incredibly ugly, but I think I've got something that tops that. This gem. I just had to cover it. We got like 8-axle trucks under this, and it's just a monster to beat all. This is another Division Point piece, but when it really comes down to just unique and macabre, you definitely nailed it here. I wouldn't get the opportunity to see a lot of this cool stuff. It wasn't just for the networking and getting to know other modelers. All right, it's time to test the old noodle. What color is this GN box painted? Is it A, vermilion red, B, cascade green, C, big sky blue, or D, glacier green? If you guessed D, glacier green, you'd be correct, as this is actually the most common font and logo used in big sky blue. It was painted glacier green in 1967. But this font and logo combination did appear in vermilion red in this unique possible one-off 40-foot box. I'm going to turn back the clock for a moment here, and I'm going to take a look at a car that I did in 2012. I refer to this as a technique car because I was learning techniques on how to weather something. This car is 100% washes. There's no chalk because I hadn't learned about chalks at this point, but there are patches on here, and I was trying to reference real photos to my models. Now, this is a shot that Ron Hawkins had taken in 1976, and that gave me an idea how grungy a car could be. Another one he took in 1977, and then another one he had in 1978. With that said, I'm getting an idea of how dirty these cars are. I found 2 shots of them from the 90s. This one's from 93, and this shot's from 1997. So, with all those shots being looked at, I kind of came together and found this to be a good balance of what I wanted the actual weathered freight car to look like. And when it is all said and done, your goal is to try to get it to look like the prototype. Did I achieve it? Maybe. But when it really comes down to it, it's all about repetition and practice. I do use Railroad Picture Archives quite often for finding photos to reference. In this case, let's search MN&S. I'm going to find a 40-foot that I've got here. It's an Intermountain. I go through range car number, and I find the 400 series. The car I'm looking for is actually number 425. If I can find one of my year of that car, that's ideal, but it doesn't always happen. Like here, this is 1978. This is 425. I pull it up. I take a look at it, and I think, it's okay. I could probably weather it like that and call it good, but I still want to dive a little bit deeper. So I stay in the same number series, and I'm going to go back and actually find one that's closer to my era. I pull up 412, and this one here, 1985, a shot by John Hill in Minneapolis. This is perfect. You can see a 40-foot by 1985 has gotten pretty tired, so you can see a lot more rust or grit and grime. I'm not going to turn it into a rust bucket, but I am going to give it a little bit of age. One of the things I do also recommend is I have levels of weathering, and I consider like an AccuRail or a regular Athearn or Roundhouse or any of those older cars that are just a shake-the-box kit. I use that as a reference, and I can start and practice on. Now, this is an Intermountain car, a little bit nicer. I consider it kind of an intermediate level in terms of detail. The grabs are okay. They're not overly fine or super fine like a Tangent, but I'm able to learn a technique here. In this case, I was working on the rust on the M&S. I don't know if I went quite as far as I could have with the photo, but I was content with how it turned out in the end. And that really is all that matters. If you're content with the stuff that you're doing, great. I look back at stuff I had done years ago and I think, whoa, I way over weathered that, or oh, I could actually weather that a little bit more. And I think that's all kind of just the finding the balance of the weathering that you're doing. If you've got freight cars sitting in their boxes and they're not getting weathered, just take the time, take a week, take a day, take a night, whatever it might be. Find yourself just weathering up a car and hopefully have something nice to roll on the rails. All right, and thanks for watching this episode of the GN in 1970.
70s.
We really enjoyed creating these episodes of the GN in 1970 as well as Sue the Milwaukee Road. The only way we know if you guys like these is hit that like button. You can hit it, click it, smash it, whatever it is that you're into. You can hit the subscribe button if you want to see on future episodes. Just make sure you ring that bell. And if you want to see more of the Great Northern, you can take a tour of the GN in 1970, which covers the HO scale Wilmer subdivision. You can also check out other episodes that I've done of Sue the Milwaukee Road that covers the 1985 merger of the Soo Line and Milwaukee Road in HO scale. Thanks a lot for watching.